Several months ago, I began to think of things that have helped me through my life. And maybe you've been asking the same question now that we're supposedly past COVID. And as I was thinking, I'm sure it's different for every individual, but has anybody ever heard of a Chilton? Chilton. Oh my goodness, it's going to take longer than 2 minutes now. Chilton. Chilton manual. Yes. For cars, yes.
Fords especially.
Fords, because they need to be fixed or repaired, right? A Chilton is a book made for a specific automobile that tells you how to disassemble and assemble any part of the car. It will tell you it takes this nut with this type of thread, coarse or fine. It'll tell you a washer goes on, a lock washer. It'll tell you how to take it apart, put it back together. A Chilton used to be, I had one for a 1973 Plymouth Fury. And it came in very handy as it broke quite often. But then we moved away from those kind of automobiles where we could work on. But you know what? The publishing industry did not lose a beat. They came up with this thing for computers called the missing manual. Anybody know that? Or Windows for Dummies. And it went step by step on how to solve something that was going on in your computer or how to learn something that is going on your computer. It's almost like a how-to book. Well, several years ago, Catherine, myself, and her siblings, we visited several Baltic states on vacation. And as we were walking those old century-old cobblestone streets of Stockholm, Sweden, and Finland, and Estonia, Latvia, and St. Petersburg, Russia, we would often stop at a cafe, and the coffees, each place had a different flavor or different type of take on coffee. And we would find ourselves sitting around the table saying, well, what do you think is in this coffee? What's that flavor that we're tasting? And I started to think, well, wouldn't it be so much easier if we just had the recipe? Well, now, since we're on the subject of food, I'll ask a question that I'm sure you will be willing to answer. How many of you own a cookbook? There you go. How many own 5 cookbooks? There you go. So how many cookbooks do you have? Too many. You know, I was talking with a pastor friend of mine, and he said that he actually had a lady that came in and said that she needed to have some counseling with him, that she was addicted to cookbooks. Ever heard of such a thing? Cookbook addiction. She had over 600 cookbooks, and anytime she saw a cookbook, she'd buy it. And even if she already had it, she bought it because you don't know if a page is going to rip. But why do you use a cookbook? Because it tells you how to create something. Oh, Catherine and I have cookbooks. We collect cookbooks from every place that we go because we've enjoyed the food in that area, some of the local dishes. The churches that Catherine and I have been blessed to serve often have a cookbook. Oh, we pick one up. We always end up with a copy. Well, you'd be surprised to know that United Methodist Church and cookbooks kind of go side by side. Our Daily Bread from Klein UMC in Spring, Texas. That's a unique name for their cookbook. Oh, here's one that shows that they are really, really about the mission of the church, feeding the faith. Humble, Texas. Didn't know there was a place called Humble in Texas. Happiness is homemade. Mission Bend, UMC in Houston, Texas. Bountiful Harvest. Evans, Colorado. Here's one that I'm not quite sure I'd buy. Heavenly Hash. Marvin, UMC, Texas. Oh, I've had several favorite cookbooks, but my favorite, bar none, is the one that we purchased from the International Protestant Church of Kinshasa in Zaire, Africa, now known as the Democratic Republic of Congo. We purchased the cookbook because of one recipe. But it had all kinds of unique recipes. It had how to put together a meal that was from gathered termites. Fufu, which is like manioc root that when you boil it, it has cyanide in it. When you boil it, the cyanide comes out. You drain the water, it becomes like Play-Doh, except it tastes awful. You pick it up with a piece that's kind of gooey, and you lop it off with a knife, throw it in your mouth, and it bounces around in your mouth until you have to swallow it, and it bounces in your stomach for a week. Chicken Muamba, which is basically a chicken cooked in peanut butter sauce. And peanut sauce are my favorite, pan-fried caterpillars. Oh! That was the highlight dish of any potluck in the International Protestant Church of Kinshasa. Pan-fried with a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. They taste just like McDonald's French fries. I'm telling you, we do cookbooks. Well, look at that. I picked up some of ours. We've got, 4, 5, 6, 7 cookbooks with all kinds of our best recipes. Come to the table, heavenly food too. Well, there's a heavenly food, but not one. Recipes to remember. I picked out a couple of these that I thought that might, here you go. 2 tablespoons chopped green pepper. We got that. Chopped onion, 2 tablespoons butter, cooked chicken cut into bite size. Wild or long grain. Oh, this is Hillary Rodham Clinton's Chicken and Rice Deluxe. Didn't know she was a member here. I'll have to send her a letter. Oh, here's one from our very own SUMC cookbook, Grasshopper Pie. I don't see any grasshoppers there. 24 cream-filled chocolate cookies. That makes it grasshoppery. Oh, here's one. I'm going to read this one. This is a recipe that I was. How to preserve a husband. Right there, page 168. Be careful in the selection. Do not choose too unripe or too old. Best results obtained if he has been reared in a healthy atmosphere. Some insist on keeping him in a pickle. Others prefer to keep him in hot water. Such treatment, however, makes a husband sour, hard, and sometimes bitter. Now, many wives have found that even some poor variety of men can be rendered tender and good by a garnish of patience. Sweetening of a smile and the flavoring of a kiss to taste. Wrap him in a mantle of charity, place him over a warm, steady fire of domestic devotion, and serve him with peaches and cream. When thus prepared, a husband will keep for years. What year was that? That was 2003. I think it might have been different in 2020. Recipes. Why do we need a recipe for things? You know what a recipe does? We don't turn around and take a recipe and say, you know what? By putting a little of what ingredients do we put in things? Cumin. I have no idea what cumin is. Cumin. There we go. Cumin. You can tell I've been preserved a little too long. Cumin. I have no idea what cumin does. Do you? What does it do to the food? But you got to put a little dab of it in there. But do we go into the great lengths of what cumin does to the food that we taste? No, we just follow the recipe. And we know if we follow the recipe that it will turn out all right. It'll taste just like grasshopper pie. Well, here we go. Do you know what recipe God has for our lives? Well, we spend all the time in the world trying to say, I wonder what God means and what patience will do in my life. I wonder what love will do. Will it make me act this way or will it make me act that way? So let me just give you the ingredients and say, put it in your life and let it be a masterpiece. Here's ingredient number 1. Be ready for God. Oh, oftentimes we turn around and we say everything's in the cupboard, but you know what? We don't want to use it just yet. It's called the principle of preparation. You have to prepare things before you can cook them, bake them, or whatever you do to them. Air fry them, deep fry them, whatever the case might be. The principle is that we follow God where God leads. We don't turn around and say the recipe says this, but I believe this would make it better. The recipe is there to tell us how much and what ingredient and how to mix them when and how long it's to bake. That's it. We don't go mucking with what God's asking us to do. Secondly, give happily to God. That's part of it. We have to give of those ingredients to put them into a pot. We don't cook the ingredients individually. We put cumin in this pot and we cook it on the thing and then, oh, hey, let's put sugar in this one and let's cook. We have to mix them all together. Happily mix the gifts and graces, the talents that we have received and put them in the pot for God. Not too long from now, as we heard earlier, that our young folks from SUMC are going to happily give of themselves in a mission trip to Kentucky. They're going to try and raise money. They're going to ask if you would be willing to give to the pot. We take up an offering so that you can put the ingredients God has given you into the pot. The third ingredient is this: fully believe in Jesus. You read the recipe and you fully believe when you do this, 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 and this, that it's going to happen. Back in France, when we were in France in language training for our mission service in Zaire, Africa, that we were craving French toast and maple syrup. I mentioned part of this, I think, in a sermon before, and somebody had a cookbook for camping. It says, if you want to make maple syrup, here's what you do. You peel 8 potatoes, you put them in a pot of water, you boil them for so many minutes, and then you take it out, you add some sugar, and voila, you'll have maple syrup. We said, how can it be? And sure enough, we had maple syrup. It tasted just like maple syrup. But you know what we didn't read on the recipe? One-time use only. Do not preserve. We put it in the fridge. We said we could have wonderful maple syrup tomorrow with another dose of pancakes. And we poured that stuff over, and it tasted just like potato water. The fourth ingredient that's important for us in our lives is to remember Jesus often. In fact, we do that through this sacrament of Holy Communion. We're told when we get together to remember the death and the burial and the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the ingredients for the gift of our salvation. And the final ingredient, the one that puts it into the oven and bakes it and cooks it until it's just right, is celebrate God's love forever. Oh, to celebrate publicly, to proclaim publicly. Today we just sang, Amazing Grace, my chains are gone. I've been set free. It's time to rejoice and to be happy. So let me just tell you the ingredients. Be ready for God. give happily to God, believe fully in Jesus Christ, remember Jesus often, and celebrate God forever. And if you put those in your lives, each of our lives, then guess what? You'll be pleasantly surprised at what the outcome will be. Let us pray. Most holy God, we thank you for giving us such a recipe, giving us something that will help us to put together the components in our lives that are needed so that we might be happy with life, that we might enjoy life, and that we might be pleasing to you as we share your love with others. And that's the purpose of cooking and the purpose of being around a table to share the goodness that is there from the ingredients that have been given and shared. Now be so with us as we receive your sacrament of Holy Communion this day, that it might once again bring us the joy of our salvation through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.